Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by First United Methodist.
John Claggett here. I'm the lay leader at our church, and our pastor is a great pastor and always is asked to be in two places at once. I am in two places at once too, so as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to the fairgrounds to work with the kids. So just join with me. I've got some words of hope and words of vision of what I've seen in the last week. This last week, I had a chance to visit with two of the council members and also have a chance to visit with some of your administrative people. And I found that the discussion was great. The discussion was upbeat. The discussion was positive, and that's what I want to see. So I want to say thanks for that. Not all government entities get that opportunity to be able to reach out and talk to others beyond their walls. We are fortunate. Also, yesterday, our church had a great time. We were just to the south of this building for our outdoor event. Had a wonderful time, wonderful music, even had some tourists participate, which is awesome. Last year we had tourist people dancing, great stuff. Within that, I made a note too that one of the persons that's on your staff did a great job, anticipated our needs, helped us, went over and above. And over and above is what we want to see. I just wanted to lift her name up as Kathy Hanks. When you see her, say thank you. Thank you is what we need to be able to emphasize more all the time. So today, as God looks down on us and God hopes for us to have the best of the best, we just give thanks. Thanks for time to be quiet in a room like this, time to be with friends, and time to look forward. Thank you again for all that you do to make the world better. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call.
Sabers.
Here.
Goldhammer.
Here.
Dosher. McCardle.
Here.
Barrington.
Here.
Baskey.
Here.
Sharps. Here. Smith.
All right, we have a quorum. We're going to start with the approval of the consent agenda items. Items appear on the consent agenda may be removed by city council members for discussion at the beginning of the formal agenda items. One thing I want to bring up real quick is item letter D, authorization to proceed the remaining design fees for the Lake Mitchell Improvement Project with Bar Engineering. So just so everyone knows, we haven't paid all the money to Bar Engineering for the dredge phase fees. It's roughly $207,000, I believe. I'm not sure if Joe's in here, but I think it's around $207,000. Just so everyone knows, we have not done that. We need to do that to move forward with the project. So there shouldn't need to be a lot of discussion. I think everything's gone through. Unless anyone else has anything they want to bring up about that, I just want to make sure it doesn't get swept under the rug. Make sure everyone knows. And other than that, I don't have anything else on there, other than council liaisons, as long as everyone's happy with that.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mrs. Sharks. Roll call?
Sharps.
Aye.
Baskey.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
McCardle. Dosher. Goldhammer.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye. Motion to approve Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium and state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered but not taken at this time.
I'm gonna get a quick thing in here, Mitchell Main Street and beyond, before you guys start. They had a few things. Elizabeth's son broke his arm. I don't have a blank here, so. Anyway, the beverage pass has started. The second Saturdays is this weekend, and the Woolworths Caramel Apples are at the end of the month. They're during Harvest Festival, and during the festival, and Mitchell Main Street and beyond is part of that, as far as selling the caramel apples. And, all right, thank you.
Anyone? You're good to go now.
Okay, Tom Fergan, I taught for 22 years at Mitchell High School, taught a natural resource class. 1976, an opportunity by First Lot in Indian Head Development. Looked across out of the bay window, beautiful serene view of the lake, the calm serenity, and it's still there because 2 of the neighbors bought the lots that were up for sale. Now, City Council, you put a lot of time and effort into finding a solution to algae that causes problems in the lake. This proposal only passed by 30 votes. You should be aware some people that voted were not aware of the type of dredging that there really is. This is not a permanent fix. When you cannot control the cattle grazing along the Firesteel Creek all the way to Resident Springs, the huge investment where there are no guarantees that when the project can begin after the lake is drained down, no guarantees that when the lake will be filled up to its capacity. What if there's a drought? What if there like we had before? When the equipment is dredging the lake, what if we have another 10-inch rain? Their lakefront owners will be losing their retaining walls. They say drain the water slowly. It's not going to stop those retaining walls from falling in. There's rocks that are holding them up. And are you going to get the rocks out to get the rest of the algae? The engineers made this work out on paper logistically with a huge price tag. Many people still fish on the lake. Waters were still active. Moving the fish habitat would be not conducive to bringing the fish population back. There are many lakes that exist with algae where people catch fish, not only here, but other lakes in this state and other places in the country. I do not understand the logic of drawing down the lake first and then submitting bids for a cleanup project. Don't you think you're getting the cart ahead of the horse? Are you putting ourselves at mercy of the contractors? What guarantee do we have that they will not take advantage of our predicament? Will they come up with a price tag that will be overinflated? We're taking huge gambles with this project. I care about all of you. Do you not want this to come back to you? I believe it will happen if you go ahead with this project, as it's planned. We are serving the people of Mitchell. If we were to have another vote, this would not pass. Some will say, well, that's their problem because they didn't know what they're voting for. Yeah, that's taking a very cool attitude toward this situation. We need to believe that our city council will serve the needs of the people. I hope we're not intimidated by the engineer's proposal. I'd like to submit it to Tom Fergan. I'd like to pass each one of you my proposal here, or my statements, and I appreciate you listening to me. So, can I give it to you and you can pass them out?
You can give it to Mike right there.
Okay. Now, how many are there? I got 10 of them here, so
Give us 10, we'll pass them around.
thank you. I'm submitting this to the council. Well, how much time do I have left?
18 seconds.
Goodbye.
Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Oh, sorry, ma'am, go ahead. No, you were there.
I'm Julie McManus, and I'm just a concerned citizen also about the lake project. I've talked to a lot of people about it, and there was some guys that were up there in age, and they said back in the 50s, they tried this in Corsica, and they drained the lake, and they couldn't get into it. It wouldn't dry out. They tried it in Crow Lake. The same thing happened. They had drained it, they couldn't get into it, so they both had to fill it back in without doing anything. So my concern for the lake project is the amount of money that it will cost and the unforeseen costs that can occur. I don't want to see our taxes going up, and I'm also concerned of the way the project is being implemented. The vote on the lake project passed only by 30 votes. And most of the people were very confused of the wording hydraulic dredging. They assumed that it was from a barge on top of the water. But what they voted for was draining the lake and manual dredging. Nor did they know that a chemical would be put in the lake each year for the next 30 years. So I would like to see Lake Mitchell healthy, but not at the cost nor at this proposal, with this proposal. With these questions I have had, I hope that you guys will consider looking into cleaning the lake in a different manner. I have had with these questions, I contacted and asked civil engineers, lake restoration personnel, waterworks personnel, soil conservationists, and farmers that have dealt with these issues. Hydraulic dredging is less costly than manual dredging. Why are we going with manual over hydraulic? With the draining of the Lake Mitchell from fall of 25 to the spring of 26, that is planned, and the plan is that it will be dry in 1 month after the draining. Yes, a crust will be formed on top of the sediment, which will act as a cap holding moisture in and allowing the sediment not to dry out. So with 11 feet of sediment in 2 acres, that is just one area. There's many more of these pockets. It could take years to dry up. If the equipment cannot get in to take the top half of the sediment off in a year's time, will the lake be filled back in, or will the project continue?
That's your time.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep, thank you.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sonia Vanderdwick. I'm from Mitchell Township. I'd like to invite everybody here in the community to a hand count ballot demonstration and training event next Tuesday, August 13th, from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Davidson County 4-H grounds. Rick Weibel is sponsoring the event. I am hosting the event. It'll be free and open to the public to learn anything about why we should hand count election ballots. A little background from Mr. Weibel. He received his BA in political science from the University of Minnesota. He has 14 years' experience as an elected official. He has 4 years city council and 10 years mayor at St. Boniface, Minnesota. He's a certified network engineer. He has 28 years of cybersecurity consulting experience as CEO D3 Defense. Mr. Weibel has been working on election integrity issues in conjunction with South Dakota Canvassing Group, excuse me, for the last 4 years. I have attended 2 of Mr. Weibel's trainings and helped supervise a table at a 3rd training which was held at the Capitol this past winter. At that training, we helped to train and educate over 100 people. After learning about the election integrity issues we have had in the U.S. and more importantly in South Dakota, I decided it was important to bring him here. Mr. Weibel is doing this free of charge. He's bringing everything with him, and he will have all the necessary supplies to educate people. In addition to that, you might ask yourselves, well, why do we need to learn about hand counting ballots? Well, we have to do now by law a hand count post-election audit. And none of the auditors have really been trained in that, and that happened in our city as well. And none of us that have been trained in it were asked to help with that. And so we want to get as many people involved. If we get people involved to learn about how to hand count, how it is efficient and accurate 100% of the time, it takes 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and a supervisor. And so a lot of people say, well, why are we going to do this? Well, what happens when the internet goes down? What happens when the electricity goes out? And once you delve into and you go to SouthDakotaCanvassing.com, SouthDakotaCanvassing.com, and you go to uscase.org, you'll learn a lot about the election integrity issues. In addition, in South Dakota, we've had what's called cast vote records on our tabulators since 2005. None of our auditors were told that information until this past year. And that is a problem. So we, as Davidson County, we are one of 4 counties that actually have the electionware that you can decode that information. So the cast vote record is the front and back picture of the ballot. So most machines, all the machines do that, the tabulators, but then we also have the electionware to do post-election, like put it into CVR form, Excel, whatever you want, and query anything you want. However, we haven't been using that. So I just want to invite all of you to come and learn. Like I said, it's free and open to the public next Tuesday. I have flyers. I'll send these around. And then if there's extras, anybody in the public's welcome. So hope you can come. Yes, thank you. Good night.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, as always, for your service to our community. I'm Luke Hagan. I'm the editor of the Mitchell Republic. Tonight, I'm here to recognize the work of an individual who has been invaluable to our community for the past 5+ years. Sam Fosness started at our newspaper as an intern in the summer of 2018. He was hired full-time later that year and took on the Mitchell City Council beat right away. He's a Mitchell native, and he's done a wonderful job covering his hometown community. Cannot begin to guess the number of stories he's written and how big of a role he's played in some of Mitchell's biggest moments during his tenure. I believe he's missed 1 or 2 Mitchell City Council meetings in the past 5 years. That's downright amazing. Being a newspaper reporter can be a thankless job, with readers expecting news immediately and easy to understand. Sam has done just that by writing on some of our community's biggest areas and also finding stories from off the beaten path to give everyone a voice. He's also helped our newspaper through a significant transition in history by playing a big role in our digital focus while maintaining a strong printed product. He has made our newspaper better every day, and he cares about doing it right through accuracy and being fair in his writing and reporting. I cannot thank him enough for his work and dedication. Soon, Sam will have his final day as a full-time reporter for the Mitchell Republic. He's moving on to become a teacher with the Mitchell School District. In the near term, he'll continue helping cover Mitchell City Council meetings, but his regular contributions at our newspaper will unfortunately decrease. Mitchell Republic readers will see fewer bylines from Sam, but he would be the first to tell you that our staff will continue working hard to give our readers the news they want and deserve. So tonight, I think it's appropriate to publicly appreciate all the work Sam has done in forming our community, telling the stories of Mitchell, and for just being a wonderful person. Thanks a lot.
Go, Sam! Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council?
My name is Neil Reff, and I've been asked to represent a group of people who are opposed to dredging but want to clean the lake. And my experience with it is I'm a district conservationist, retired, 25 years in Gerald and Sanborn County. And my experience with dredging was a Crow Lake in Gerald County, where they tried to deepen it so we wouldn't have the winter kill on the fish. Well, the draining was no problem. The next year we couldn't get on it, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. After 4 years of not being able to get heavy equipment on that soupy mess, they plugged the dam and filled it up again. And I'm afraid you're going to have the same problem here, in that I don't know what kind of equipment you're talking about to dredge with, but it's going to sink out of sight, I believe. And I believe you got a real optimistic projected timeline. If to drain 1 year, leave it dry 2 years, begin to fill. Has anybody checked to see how much water is involved, the capacity of Lake Mitchell, and the amount of runoff coming in from Firesteel Creek? A good hydrologist could probably do that for you, but it's going to take several years, in my estimation, to fill Lake Mitchell. And once it's filled, you got another problem. We have no fish because you've drained it. So you got to restock and bring it back to its original use. At that point, several years will have gone by. I don't think your landowners are going to be real happy. And then you've got a disposal site. I heard last time it was a Firesteel Park. At one time you were going to drive by a quarter of land, and I figured with the size of Lake Mitchell, about 640 acres roughly, If you put that dredge 1 foot deep on a quarter of land, it would raise that land 4 feet. And the soil involved coming out of there is absolutely sterile. It will not support anything but weeds. It has no tilth, no structure, no organisms, no nothing to support plant growth. So you're going to have a mess no matter where you put it. With that, I would suggest that maybe you look at the dam up at the Hutterites where the chemical was used and give it a shot. If you don't like it, I can see my time's up.
That is your time. Thank you.
You might consider it.
Anyone else wish to address the council?
Good evening, council, mayor, staff. My name's Mark Pitts. I'm here representing Friends of the Fire Steel. We'd heard that people were looking for an update on how fundraising was going, so wanted to just bring that up and let folks know where we're at. We are just under $1.1 million of commitments to date, so those commitments, it's kind of up to the donors themselves, but we've set it so that no funds would be due until the year, essentially, that the bids are approved, and basically by the end of December 31st, the years that the bids are approved. So we've received some of the funds. We give them the option if they want to give us those funds in advance. That's great. We'll obviously take those in advance, but our goal ultimately is that $3 million. We've just kind of moved from the transition of working on the election to getting back into the fundraising process, as that fundraising process kind of stalled out when there was the question of the election. But we've already received another commitment of $75,000 in the last 2 weeks it was. So we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the folks in the community, and people, in Mitchell, around the area. The group that makes up those that have committed are lake residents, they're people from in town, they're people from outside the city limits, so it's a very diverse and mixed group of people interested that are donating, putting a lot of money in, or a lot of commitment in place. So I guess that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? If not, I'd like to give my 3-minute little presentation, if you want to bring up those pictures real quick, Stephanie. So Mike brought up last week about how he would like to do rental and property inspections, and I had a lot of people reach out to me for and against. One thing that came up a lot is how the city is one of the biggest offenders of nuisance properties, and they gave me a lot of examples. So I ended up touring a lot of facilities to get some pictures. So I'm just going to run through a lot of these pictures just so you guys kind of know, especially the council, if you guys haven't toured the facilities, a lot of these guys would be willing to give them to you. This is Hitchcock Park. This is one of the electrical boxes out there, very rusted. It looks terrible. Could use a little paint job. Fire extinguisher or fire hydrants. This one's pretty bad. This is actually a lack of curb on 6th Street. A lot of people that live in this area have reached out to me and go to the next one. You can see that there's absolutely no curb there whatsoever. We wouldn't allow that in a new development. Let's see what else we got here. This is the parking lot outside of the Corn Palace, like right across from Muth Electric. Overgrown weeds, overgrown trees. I'm not sure. Just hit the space bar maybe. And there's a sidewalk outside of the Corn Palace. We had mentioned about the Corn Palace having a lack of maintenance, but I mean, I toured that, and those pictures are in there. We can get to them if you keep going. A lot of our signs are completely rusted at the bottom. There's another rusty sign. Every sign that used to be green is now rust. Again, that's where people park to go visit the Corn Palace. So I think when you walk in the Corn Palace, it's beautiful, but the walk there is not beautiful. Again, there's some more missing curb. This is outside the James Valley Community Center, missing curb, gone. This has been like this for years. I've been tracking this. You can keep going. Another missing curb, a completely missing curb right by American Garage Door on a major street. There's no lights in Hitchcock Park. This is that's a grandstand where it's rusty. The wood is rotten. This is alleys. We actually fixed that alley. This is the amphitheater, a huge puddle everywhere, like standing water, which they treat for mosquitoes. This is the Kiwanis Park, where they have to block boulders off because it gets so muddy and people mud bog through it. You can keep going. That's another one at Kiwanis Park. This is actually really dangerous. I don't know if you guys knew about this. That light pole over at Cadwell Park fell down. A huge light pole fell down because of lack of maintenance. And that could have killed someone, and it was right by a playground. That's Hitchcock Park. That's the sign for our flagship big park. That's Hitchcock Park, broken glass. And I'm not trying to rag on the city, but people have pointed this stuff out to me, and we can keep going through these pictures. And then there's the Corn Palace roof. So if you remember, we were talking about the roof. It looks pretty good up there. We can keep going. So I inspected the roof. It's all EPDM rubber roofing. That's where they repaired it. We had some stuff poked through, so they fixed that. There's some more of the rubber roof. Just to give everyone an update, there's the seats in the Corn Palace. They have updated pretty much all those seats. Everything looking good in there. This is just an update. Sorry if I've gone over my 3 minutes. There isn't any ripped seats. That's where the water damage was before. That all looking good. There's almost no water damage on any of the ceiling tiles anywhere, so that's all been repaired. This is a standard seat. 21 inches is how wide the seats are. I know we were talking about seat sizes. You can go to the next one. It's industry standard between 19 and 22. We're right there on standard sizes. So this is Hitchcock Park at night on a full moon. Super dark and super black. I don't know if you can see the pictures. So I know some people got ripped on the internet about rental inspections. My inbox blew up for and against. And I think before we make a decision on that, which I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, there's some more broken concrete. This is Main Street, bad curbs. I think we need to look inward, and we need to be the people that set the example for what our community needs to look like. So rather than shove a bunch of money into like big new projects and stuff, this is at the park. So this was actually, that door used to be ground level, and it's raised over 3 feet. So that's what our park guys are dealing with. So I just think we need to consider before doing anything, we need to be the example and set the standard. And I just want to make sure that all the people that reached out to me and said, we need to do some work, know that I listened and that it's on the table. And that's all I have. Unless anyone else would like to address the council.
Mayor, I have one question, please. In the discussion about the lake issues, my question is, the approval was for a certain amount of money to be applied for the lake project. What happens if these bids come in way over?
That'll be your decision, I believe.
Or does it have to go back to a vote? You know, what
I don't know that
happens?
one.
Anybody have the answer?
So the authorization of the vote was to get that into the 10% debt capacity for the loan. So any amount above that authorization, obviously council would have to approve, whether you're applying cash or if you funded a different manner, that would be up to council to decide at a future date. You wouldn't have to go to a vote. Council put this one to a vote, put it in a different debt capacity, but ultimately council has to approve if it goes beyond what you've already authorized by the election.
And if it goes to a 4-4 tie, the mayor then could.
Not on expenses, right? Not on expenses.
Budget, so it just dies for lack of majority?
Yep, that'd be correct. The mayor can't break the ties on expenditures.
Anything else? Anyone else wish to address the council? All right, Board of Adjustment, entertain a motion for the city council to recess and sit as the Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
We have a move and a second, Mr. Goldhammer and Mr. McCardle. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Hearing and action of application of Nathan Weber variance permit. Nathan Weber has applied for a variance permit for a rear yard setback of 11 feet versus 25 and an accessory building of 4,224 square feet versus 2,000 square feet. This is located at 25154 407th Avenue, legally described as shown on the agenda. Mr. Jenigas.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 7-0. Notice in the paper, neighbors were notified, sign posted. I did receive one letter today that was in favor of this from the neighbor to the north. I did not bring it because there were no comments on it at all. The applicant would like to build this dwelling unit and accessory unit on the land that he purchased from the people to the west, or excuse me, to the east there. They had discussions before purchasing all this property to try and keep it looking the same for the distance between the buildings. He'd like to push it back a little bit for the rear yard setback instead of moving it towards the front, so that way he can back a camper at 60 feet instead of 45 feet. Also, a little better sight line for the neighbor to the north that has the house there. This does meet the definition of a dwelling unit. So whether you call it a house, barn dominium, whatever it may be, it's a dwelling and an accessory building. Attached garage is an accessory building. It can't be out of galvanized steel, which the applicant knows that as well. This area, it's zoned R4. It's on 407, so actually it should probably be rezoned to urban development out there. So looking at our comprehensive plan that we just completed, that should probably be looked at as well for our zoning itself. It's two different plans that we go by with that. Another little different with this area is the access easement that is on the south side of this property. So it kind of seems like all those should have the south be the front setback, but 407th is the front setback for all those, even though they don't have the road there, they have the easement to it. I can answer any questions that you have for me on this.
Mark, this isn't in the city limits,
It
is
is
it?
not in the city limits. It's right on the edge of the ETJ.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion by Mrs. Sharks,
Second.
second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action to set the date for a Board of Adjustment hearing, 08-19-24. Juan L. Gibson has applied for a conditional use permit to operate a family residential daycare located at 505 South Davison Street, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Set the date.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to discuss this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 08-19-2024. Schmitz Construction has applied for a variance permit for a minimum lot width of 66 feet versus 100 feet and a minimum lot area of 10,890 square feet versus 14,000 square feet located at 821 North Messenger, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Set the date.
Set the date. We have a motion by Mr. Goldhammer, second by Mrs. Sharks. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to discuss this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action to set the date for a Board of Adjustment hearing 8/19/24. Curtis and Sonia Betts have applied for a variance permit for a combination of attached and detached accessory building of 3,076 square feet versus 2,000 square feet building to build a new attached accessory building of 1,476 square feet located at 204 North Harmon, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Set the date.
Set the date by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to discuss this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action to set the date for the Board of Adjustment 08-19-24. The City of Mitchell has applied for a variance permit for a minimum lot width of 89.89 feet versus 100 and minimum lot of 1,139 square feet versus 10,000 square feet located at 115 South Harmon Drive, legally described as Lot 58B of Indian Head subdivision. Lake Mitchell Development Plan, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? I have a question. Is this about one of the lake lots that we were talking about selling? Can you bring that up? Can we look at that a little bit? You have the, I just want to make sure everyone knows. what we're
GIS
talking
photo of this in there.
This is E, right?
Yes.
Yep, it'd be for that lot right there.
So this is just to set the date to make that, so then we can later sell it. Is that correct?
It's to plat the piece of property, and in order to plat it, the variance would have to be approved for the plat because it doesn't meet the requirements for that.
Okay, sounds great.
Not necessarily selling or anything at this time, it's just
Okay,
platting.
just making sure.
Yep.
And just as a reminder for the public, any lakeland or adjacent parkland to the lake would need to go to a public vote for ordinance of the city.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion and a second? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 8/19/24. The city of Mitchell has applied for a variance permit and a minimum lot width of 5 feet versus 100 feet, and a minimum lot area of 2,661 square feet versus 10,000 square feet, located at 129 South Harmon, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Move set the date.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Reconvene as city council. Entertain a motion for the Board of Adjustment to adjourn and the city council to reconvene in regular session.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Now the fun stuff. Presentation of Sunnyside Drainage Basin Report, McLaury Engineering, Inc. Do you need a laser pointer?
I got one here.
Okay, all right, this guy came prepared.
Stephanie, are you able to, if I just tell you next slide, you able to? Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Murtha. I'm one of the senior project managers at McLaury Engineering. So tonight we're gonna go through the Sunnyside drainage study and hopefully answer a few questions you guys may have. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. In general, we'll just I'll give you a little overview of the location of the project, some background on the area that we're studying, purpose of the study, why we got started with this whole thing, kind of break down some of the existing storm sewers so you can see that, talk through some of the models for the alternatives that we looked at, discuss the costs, and then conclusions and recommendations. So, in general, I hopefully the colors are all fairly easy to see here, but in general, what you're seeing in dark blue there, that is the Sunnyside drainage basin. So that is the area that this study encompasses. And then there is an area that's kind of outlined in green there, that smaller area. We did a little bit of additional topographic survey and study on that area because we have had significant issues in that area. So
Ryan, can you just clarify what our northernmost street is and maybe what?
absolutely. Do you mind going to the next slide? And then I can,
Yes. just
that
a little
one,
bit hard to tell.
let's see. So I have some of
Okay, there you go.
the statements on there, so absolutely. So in general, the Sunnyside drainage basin, urban basin, it's mainly residential with also some commercial, educational, recreational, and healthcare facility uses. So off to the right, you're going to see that is essentially the zoning map. The majority of this, the dark blue, that is the residential, commercial in the pink, kind of along Havens, healthcare in yellow, and some other uses in there. But to the north of Havens, on the west side, we're bounded by Montana. On the east side, generally by Wisconsin. And then it goes all the way north to Ash Avenue, which is essentially the road right next to Dry Run Creek. South of Havens, we're bounded by University on the east side, Edgerton on the west side, and then on the south, goes all the way down to Hearst and Kynette Place. So the study area is 212 acres, and in general, there are a few open lots, but we would consider it fully developed. So you can go to the next slide there. So when we set off on this, the purpose of this study was to evaluate the drainage conditions in the Sunnyside drainage basin, to develop a hydrology model for the existing system and analyze that system in both a 5-year and 100-year storm events, and then take a look at the insufficiencies in the existing system for that 5-year and 100-year event. And finally, we moved on to new alternatives that would meet the city of Mitchell's current storm sewer design standards. So as a little bit of perspective, I want to show you guys the existing storm sewer system so you understand it before we move into the proposed. So Off to our left here, this is kind of the downstream end of the storm sewer system. So this trunk line right here is on Wisconsin Street, and it is outletting a dry run there with a 36-inch RCP pipe. As we work our way upstream, we go to 30-inch, and then the pink here is showing 24-inch. That then moves to the west down Havens. There's some 18-inch pipe that picks up everything over on Havens. And as we go south, we'll move over to the right side here. This portion of the trunk line picks up everything south and essentially south and west of Havens through this whole drainage basin. So that 18-inch pipe is going to drain that entire portion of the system. As we're moving to the west then, getting over towards Williams, I guess you can flip to the next slide there, you'll see that on Williams and Anderson, that area where we've had troubles, that existing system, that's all 15-inch pipe that's draining that. On Hurst, there's just some 12-inch, and the west end of Havens is also 15-inch pipe. So in total, we took that 212 acres, we broke it all down. There's actually 112 sub-basins within that that are draining to different areas, and then 103 total inlets, 157 storm sewer pipes, and then there's 3 detention ponds, existing detention ponds. The first being just east of Edgerton, that is just south of Dakota Physical Therapy. And then there's another one east of Sunnyside Court, so it's just kind of a linear one here along parallel to Anderson. And there's a small one north of Williams and south of the county jail. So basically, all this works together to move all the water to that one trunk line going down Wisconsin Street. So you can go ahead and head to the next slide there.
Brian, can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Tell me what, like 103 inlets, what does that mean?
So the inlets are what we're picking the water up in. So over the area of that 212 acres, there's just 103 storm sewer inlets where the water can get into get into the system.
Okay.
So in general, I mean, this is fairly high level, but the existing storm sewer, the issues, what we're finding, inlet sizes are generally inadequate. A lot of the inlets are a fairly small size inlet that we generally don't see utilized in standard design around here anymore. So small inlets, the inlets are fairly, there's a fairly large spacing between them, so we do need more inlets. However, even if we had all those inlets, the pipe sizes are also inadequate, so although we can't get all the water into the storm sewer system, even if we could, the pipe sizes need to be increased anyway, so it all kind of works together. So in essence, we end up with a significant number of pipes throughout the system that are surcharged or operating under pressure during that 5-year storm event, during all storm events, but the 5-year being the one that the city of Mitchell designs to. We did put some particular emphasis on the Williams and Anderson area because of the historical flooding issues there. That area just has 3 inlets that are in, we say they're in sump condition, which essentially means that water has to pond there and fill up to a certain level before it can spill out of that drainage basin and go elsewhere. So there's just the 3 inlets. They struggle to take on that amount of water, but even if they could take on the water, the pipes right there are just 15 inches. They're insufficiently sized to carry that water away. And then essentially this is the far top end of this entire drainage basin. So what that means is all the water, that water essentially has to wait for water to clear from the rest of the system before it's able to take its turn and get downstream. So what we found during the modeling of that existing is it essentially matches, the models matched up with what we were seeing during these large storm events. So you can go ahead and head to the next slide. So for our analysis, we start off by building a model of the entire storm sewer system. We plugged in all the information for the pipe sizes, inlet locations. We input all the zoning information to essentially build out that entire model of the existing conditions. And then we also built models of the proposed solutions. So with the proposed solutions, we've got 3 scenarios, which I'll dive into a little more right after on the next slides. But scenario 1, in general, we looked at how to get some immediate relief for that Williams and Anderson area. So that looked at building a detention pond over in that area and running water from that area into it while leaving the rest of the system as is. Then scenario 2, we looked at utilizing the infrastructure put in place in scenario 1 and replacing the rest of the system. Scenario 3 was a standalone scenario where we worked off the idea that we wouldn't be able to install that detention pond, whether it be through, we couldn't get the land or choose not to do it. So what would we need to do to upsize all the pipes just to handle the water directly without that detention pond? So,
One more question while you're
yeah, go
there.
ahead.
And this is probably a stupid question, but I still have to ask, which way is the water flowing on these? Or is it flowing?
Where is it, at what part?
Which direction is it flowing? Does it flow, or does it kind of disperse out to all directions?
So,
You know what I'm asking? Is it flowing to the south? Is it flowing to
so
the
in
north?
general, all the piping is taking everything to Dry Run Creek.
Okay.
Everything's working its
So
way up.
regardless of where it is in the city, in this particular scenario.
In this sub-basin, or in this basin, this
Going to Dry Run.
Sunnyside drainage basin, everything's heading to
Okay,
Dry Run
that's what I
Creek.
needed to know, thanks.
Yep. You want to go on to the next slide there? Okay, so diving into scenario 1 a little bit here. Again, at the city's request, they wanted us to look at a scenario to try to get some immediate relief for this Williams and Anderson area because of the previous issues. And as I mentioned, this is at the top of the drainage system, so it's hard to fix the top end without fixing something below unless you look at storage. So we looked at the idea of putting a drainage basin a detention basin to the north of the county jail. And essentially we would install new inlets and piping from that Williams and Anderson intersection, go up Anderson and tie into that detention basin. And then that detention basin would flow out into the existing storm sewer system on Miller. So essentially, we're able to reduce the water depths at those inlets to meet city standards for that 5-year storm event. And then that detention pond helps regulate the flows going out to the existing system so we don't add a bunch of additional surcharge and just move the problem a little ways downstream. So next slide. From here, we do have, we did build in, I guess the city asked that be our first focus, so then we looked at in scenario 1A, B, and there is a C, but A and B just essentially extend piping and inlets over to Edgerton and install inlets along Edgerton to carry additional water to the detention pond, and that then takes relief off of some piping in the Sunnyside court area where there has also been flooding. So this builds upon scenario 1 that would already be completed and just pushes more water into that detention pond. Then if you go to the next slide, scenario 1C essentially does the same thing by building on scenario 1, except we're just pushing pipe down to State Avenue and William Street.
How big would that detention pond have to be to give relief to that Williams and Anderson area? Does it have to be that big? That's
So the reason it looks that big is because the elevation that's out there that's actually that's higher than the Williams and Anderson area. So we have to have a pretty significant footprint so that we can grade down low enough to get storage capacity at the bottom to do what we're looking to do. So the footprint becomes large to get the effects that we need. So, yeah, and you can go to next slide there.
How deep might that pond be?
I apologize, I do not have that number off the top of my head. I looked through the report on a lot of things, so I'd have answers, and I don't remember that answer.
I mean, it's so deep that's a safety issue?
We would ensure that the side slopes and everything would be an acceptable, something that's mowable, maintainable and everything, and it's not going to become a safety issue. We do standard slopes on that, so. To clarify, it would be something that in scenario 1, it likely would not totally drain out, but once everything is fully built out, that pond would drain out after every rain event. It wouldn't be a total retention pond in the final design, just detention. So scenario 2, we're looking at, again, assuming scenario 1 is in place, now we're moving forward with scenario 2. So this is a build out of the rest of the system. So this examines the rest of the basin. Essentially what we found is because of the amount of water that is draining down to Dry Run Creek currently just through Wisconsin, it's such a large amount of water that the size of the pipe that would be necessary to carry that water down Wisconsin is design and cost prohibitive. We likely would run into significant issues with water mains, sanitary sewers, everything else. So we split the basin into 2 sub-basins and created 2 trunk lines to get the water out of here. So on the right-hand side and the lower right-hand side, the stuff in green, that would be the east basin. The stuff in blue would be the west basin. So the east basin is going to drain out through this east trunk line. So the pipe coming down Wisconsin and out to Dry Run Creek now, that would actually be a 54-inch pipe. The west trunk line, draining everything in blue, would be a 48-inch trunk line. So that's the amount of capacity that we need to drain this basin and meet the City of Mitchell's standards. Go ahead.
And that's for a 5-year flood? That's what you're...
That is for a 5-year event. So, and I will say, we do make accommodations for the 100-year. We designed for 5-year. We make accommodations for 100 years to ensure we don't have significant issues, but yes, the design event is for a 5-year. So just to mention, or to again reiterate, this does utilize the detention basin, so that does allow us to slightly reduce the pipe sizes along Miller Avenue and Foss Place. So we're able to reduce ponding, increase the system capacity, and regulate some of those upstream flows. You can go to the next slide. So here we're looking at the kind of the top end of the system, the picture on the left being that west subbasin. So the stuff in red is everything that would have been built out in phase 1 flowing into the pond. Everything else here, this is essentially a new trunk line down Miller that would be collecting everything throughout this basin, and it'll carry it up and out through Montana. The east side, this is an independent system then, picks up everything over by Minnesota and carries it up and over to Wisconsin. Next slide. So scenario 3, again, essentially we're dealing with the same scenario, however, assuming we do not have a detention pond at the top end of this. So again, we end up having to divide this drainage basin into 2 major subbasins and create 2 trunk lines, increase all the pipe and inlet sizes and throughout the system. I will point out there are some pipes that meet, some existing pipes that do meet standards, but there aren't a lot. It's generally small little areas on side streets where the existing system does meet standards. So, so with scenario 3, yeah, I guess, again, we're getting a reduction in the ponding and an increase in that capacity, but we don't get to take advantage of the detention pond. So go to the next slide. If on the east basin here, you'll see, if you compare this to the previous slides, this is gonna look the same because we do not have any detention on this east basin. So that's gonna look the same as scenario 2. The west side, because we don't have that detention basin, everything is going to be, things are gonna be piped differently, pipe sizes are gonna be different as we carry that water up to Montana. Next slide. All right, cost estimates. So I want to put a couple of explanations out there for this. Keep in mind, as we did these cost estimates, this is very preliminary. It's looking at the idea of, we had to make some assumptions. We assume most clay sanitary sewer lines being replaced. There's certain water mains are being replaced. There's we're looking at total road reconstruction over some of these. We're including those costs as generalizations. However, as you guys are aware, during scoping process and stuff with projects, sometimes it's, well, let's leave this in place, or let's pick up this side street. And so we didn't have the benefit of a full scope for every individual project. We had to make generalizations and assumptions. These things could change. The other thing I'd like to point out is our phasing won't necessarily line up in the top versus in the bottom. So with scenarios 1 and 2, phase 1, we're able to go to the very top end of the system and start up there and do something. Then we go to the bottom and restart and start working our way upstream. Whereas with scenario 3, we just have to start at the bottom. I mean, I'm not saying we couldn't look at doing something towards the top, but in general, it's hard to start at the top of a drainage project and work your way down. So the thing I will point out though, total cost, having that detention pond in there will likely save a couple $1 million just because of the ability to downsize storm sewer pipes. And yeah, we did, so the phasing on this, we worked with the city to, the engineering department to basically say, hey, these would be reasonable projects. Let's, this phase would be something we could construct at this time. This phase is something, so they helped us to break this down into those different phases. So, next slide.
So this isn't a pick one of the 3. This is we need them all. Is that what your recommendation is? Or am I jumping the gun?
No, I mean, that's a very fair question. So in general, the entire storm sewer system as a whole is undersized to meet your standards. So at some point, this is likely what we'd be looking at for updating. My recommendation is not to go spend $20 million. We can phase things in with projects that need to be done, but in general, we're looking at this as a total comprehensive system at the end.
So let's say that we just started with the detention pond that you recommend. Is that something that is going to get us by? Would that get us by for a while or not really? That would just service one part of the area?
It would. I mean, essentially, it's gonna assist in one portion of the area, one portion of the basin. So you're gonna see some improvements for the areas that are draining into that detention basin. Likely not gonna see any or any improvements in many of the other areas.
And we don't own that detention land. We don't own that land either, so we'd have to make sure we could get that. So I think that's why they did the extra, in case we can't secure that land.
Correct.
So
Who does own it?
the county.
Yep. Okay. So conclusions and recommendations. General conclusions. We've got, as a whole, we've got inadequate inlet and pipe sizes. The spacing between them is too far. We don't have a properly sized trunk line to carry water out of this system. And it appears that over time, there was an existing trunk line on Wisconsin, and things built out over time. New developments were added, and that capacity, the additional capacity that was necessary, or the additional detention, was not added into the system over the years. So recommendations, essentially we see it as we're either looking at scenario 1 plus scenario 2, or we're looking at scenario 3. So scenario 1 gives us that ability to go to the area that the city is saying, hey, this is one of our biggest problem areas. We can start there without trying to do all the improvements all the way upstream, and we can get some immediate relief. And then we can move back to to the rest of the system. Scenario 3 says, hey, let's just look at improving everything without that basin. So again, we can phase things to work with what city budgets will allow, and what other projects are priorities. I'm not saying we have to start at the bottom. It's just those are things we'll have to consider if we want to see relief. So,
Ryan, you said you're going to do a 48 and a 54 if we did that scenario?
Yep.
So I guess I'm thinking a little bit before ahead, maybe we need to address Dry Run Creek first, because we're going to really increase the flow into that creek.
So that is a very fair statement. When I go back to the analysis of the planning of these scenarios, what I'll tell you is we made a lot of attempts to add in detention on this system. However, this being a fully developed drainage basin makes that very difficult. You got to look for the land that's available in general. I mean, there maybe are other ways to achieve it, but cost effectiveness, you look for the land that's available. Well, that all happens to be on the very top end of this system. So it was really hard to find detention storage space that existed anywhere other than at the far top end of this, which essentially leaves us with the option of piping it down to dry run. But yes, that's something that has to be looked at.
One more thing. So what is the west boundary? Which street is the west boundary? Was it
Edgerton.
Edgerton?
Yep.
So did you look at taking some of that water to the west?
We discussed that at length with the engineering department. The problem is that is a totally separate drainage system. Not just drainage system, but drainage hydrologic basin. I mean, essentially, we're talking about crossing a boundary and pushing water onto a different area. And so it was something that they did not want us to, a road they didn't want us to go down. So, any other questions?
I have a question here.
We have a question. We have a question from the audience.
Okay, thank you.
You have to come up to the podium, though.
The 10 inches of rain we got here end of June, is that a 5-year rain situation? Or you call that more than a 100-year rain situation? What is that?
It's like between 200 and 500 years, I think they called it.
10 inches, 2 and 5 here. So what do you think?
I guess I don't have that answer directly off the top of my head. I believe the engineering department looked at that previously, so I'd have to default to the answer that you guys are giving on that.
Joe Schrader, Public Works Director, if you can hear me. Back in 2019, we received it was roughly a 1,000-year event within the city of Mitchell. This last one, depending on whose range gauge you looked at and the duration, it was anywhere from a 200 to 1,000. There were a lot of similarities, but there were also a lot of differences between this last one and the one from 2019.
6 inches, 2019.
They also calculate how much rain in what period of time you get. So you could have 6 inches over 12 hours, or you could have 6 inches in 1 hour. It changes the variable. I think they're going to get away from the how many years it is because there's been some controversy on long years. So
That is very accurate.
is that the end of your speech?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's all I have unless you guys have additional questions.
I was just going to add, just for the public's benefit that might be watching, this is the second of our presentations. I believe we have one more report. And then as discussed at the last city council work session, we'll bring the results of all those back together for council to review and look at master planning and entire drainage plan like we've done for water and sewer and other infrastructure projects for the city.
And that Williams and Anderson is consistently like the last place to drain in town. So this one's pretty important. I mean, this is 4, 5, 6 days after the rains, big time. Just for the public.
And the one I did want to bring up from the presentation is that I know it was stated that, inlet sizes are too small and there's not enough number of inlets. But the issue is the pipe size is the major contributor of that standing water, because the pipe cannot take the water away fast enough. It's not necessarily an issue of number of inlets and size of inlets at this time. So there'd be no benefit to increasing size or number of inlets at those locations until there is an additional outlet for that water to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing in action on the application of the Exchange Club of Mitchell for a special event liquor license located at Burn ID 219 East First Avenue on September 14th, 2024 for an open mic night.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Lieutenant Kniplin from the Police Department.
Turn your mic on.
Staff has no objections to this. Recommend approval.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action approved to amended special event permit for Corn Palace Festival from August 21st through August 25th. Parking lot space reassignment. Mr. Greenway, do you want to speak about this?
We are simply trying to accommodate some handicap parking that we removed from the north side of the Corn Palace during the festival and on Main Street. So we're going to add these 9 handicap spots just south of the Corn Palace Plaza stage. Very simple. There's no signage. We'll do temporary handicap signage, which is legal and approved by the traffic department.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak about this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action to approve special event permit application for Grace Baptist Church Vacation Bible School Family Night on Friday, August 9th, 2024.
Mayor, Council, Aaron Heeb. The Grace Baptist Church, their Vacation Bible School Family Night will be this Friday, August 9th from 4 to 10 p.m. The submitted special event permit is requesting the street closure of West Douglas Avenue from South Edmund Street east to the alley. Also, Grace Baptist Church is asking that the City Council consider waiving the special event permit street closure fee of $200, and staff recommends City Council approval of the requested permit as outlined in the application. Thank you.
I think we've done this before, so I'll move to approve.
A motion by Mr. McCardle,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Goldhammer. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience want to talk about this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve Copper Flats consent to assignment.
All right, so this relates to the Copper Flats tax increment district that was recently approved. After that was approved by council, and the project plan was approved by council. Let me back up 1 second here. So with that TIF, we were dealing with two different entities. There was the LLC, which was going to be the developer for the project plan, and then the limited partnership, which the LLC is a member of, but actually held the land and was going to be taking out the debt and stuff like that. So after the project plan was approved and everything by the council, the entities, through their attorney, determined that they wanted the proceeds to go to the LP instead of the LLC. So really, all this agreement is doing is saying, we're going to take the TIF proceeds and pay them to the LP instead of the LLC. So that's the whole purpose of this. And we'll
Sounds good
open
to
it
me.
up to any questions then.
Move to approve. Huh?
All right. I'll second Kevin's motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak about this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve amendment number 1 to agreement A 2021-10 with Helms and Associate for new recycling building project number 2021-30.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. City Council approved an agreement with Helms and Associates for design and bidding services for the new recycling transfer station on February 16th of 21. The attached amendment adds construction phase services for the project. Services will include project administration, observation, testing, and staking. Staff recommends City Council approve the amendment with Helms and Associates on an hourly not to exceed basis of $79,500 for said services. I can answer any questions you may have.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve amendment to agreement A 2023-6 with McCleary Engineering for 3rd and Railroad Main Street Construction Services, project number 2022-26.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. The City of Mitchell approved construction phase services with McCleary Engineering at the February 21st, 2023 meeting for the 3rd and Main project. The attached amendment to this agreement adds additional services provided during the 3rd and Main project, along with adding construction phase services for the Railroad and Main Streetscape project. Unforeseen items during the 3rd and Main Streetscape project included additions to the sidewalk plan for ADA compliance, removing an existing asbestos-wrapped heating pipe from beneath the intersection, modifications to the sidewalk near the Woolworth building to accommodate ADA requirements, and modification to the water main design due to existing underground conditions. Construction phase services for Railroad and Main Street project full services, which will include installation of water main, sanitary sewer and storm sewer, concrete curb and gutter, and asphalt improvements. McCleary Engineering will provide construction administration, observation, testing, and staking services. See attached amendment for additional information. The full budget for, so the way that the project was laid, it had 2nd and 4th and Railroad was added. So the full cost of the entire project whole won't be realized until 2nd and 4th are bid, which will be late this fall. For some reason, coming over budget, we'll request additional dollars through the supplemental process early winter. So with that, staff does recommend City Council approval of the attachment with McCleary Engineering at an amount not to exceed $145,500. I can answer any questions you may have.
Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mrs. Charks. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement A 2024-34, AIP number 3-46, 4600-32-2024 for the design of the revenue-producing hangar with South Dakota Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. The airport is requesting the council accept and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for the design of a revenue-producing hangar. The airport, the state reimburses the city 90% of project costs not to exceed $84,600. City share is estimated at $9,400 for a total agreement cost of $94,000. The proposed hangar will consist of 3 to 4 separate areas for aircraft. Attachment for your information. Staff does recommend council approval of the attached agreement with the SDDOT and to authorize the mayor to sign. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion. Joe, how much revenue are we talking about producing here?
So we're looking at producing around 1,000 a year.
1,000 per year?
10,000.
Oh, 10,000.
Yep. So our payback for our share would be roughly 10 years, and then we would then be in the black.
That's not bad. Okay. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All right, we have.
I have,
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. So if we're renting it for 10,000 and our cost share is 9,400, wouldn't it be after the first year? Or are we sharing that revenue with the state as well?
Yep. So this is just for the design. The next phase of this will be the construction, and I want to say it's roughly $1.2 million all in.
That's not as good as I thought.
So that'll still be at a 10% city cost share. It's kind of a unique situation where we had bill dollars that we can do revenue producing projects, whereas the FAA and state typically does not allow us to do a cost share for revenue producing projects.
So $1 million building and we'll get $10,000 a year.
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement A 2024-35, Notice of Grant Requirements with North American Wetlands Conservation Act, NACA.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Works Director. So if the attached document is approved, City of Mitchell agrees to be bound by the terms of the grant agreement as they relate to the property, being the Kelly, as known as the Kelly property, including the obligation to ensure the long-term conservation of the property and to obtain the consent of U.S. and Wildlife Service Division of Bird Habitat Conservation prior to the sale, conveyance, or encumbrance of the portion of the 330-acre portion of the Kelly property that was included in the grant project. So basically, this is saying that as using this property for match in the NACA grant, it needs to be used for the practices that were listed in that agreement, which it's currently being used for that now. And if we were to change those uses, we would have to contact the NACA folks and either pay back for that grant that they allotted us or swap property or something along those lines. And this would be filed at the courthouse, so it goes with the property moving forward. With that, staff does recommend council approval, grant authorization for the mayor to sign, and I can answer any questions you may have. Mr. Johnson did review this agreement, so he's privy to it as well.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Goldhammer, second by Mr. Barrington. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion Motion carries. Action to approve Resolution R 2024-50, creating a tax increment District 37. Mr. Johnson.
All right, well, I'll give you the background on this one. We've been doing a lot of TIFs lately, so a lot of this will probably sound pretty familiar. The area for this one is just east of the Pizza Hut and Bros Engineering area on East Havens. It involves the relocation of the Interstate Glass business. This would be an expansion when compared to their existing operation. Does also include the addition of, I believe, 3 new jobs. In general, it's structured the same way as we've been doing all of our past TIFs, where it's a grant pass-through type structure. The debt associated with it does not count against the city's constitutional statutory debt. And other terms are very similar as well. It'd be a 20-year TIF. There's no interest associated with it. At the end of the 20 years, it would expire, or if it's paid off early, it would also expire. If it's not classified as economic development, it would also expire. Developers agreed to waive the discretionary formula. There are some reporting requirements built in for the developer. And then you can kind of see the project cost breakdown. Again, all of the costs we classify as grants, but the table that they provide kind of breaks out how they're basing their dollar amount on the amount that they're requesting. You can see that they have a number of costs that are listed as TIF eligible, adding up to $769,000. They're requesting $519,347 because that's all the TIF is projected to generate in increment over that 20-year period. And I think with that, that probably gives you most of the basics. We can probably open it up to questions unless Stephanie has anything to add.
No, I think the only thing I would just add is if you're looking at our previous TIF that we approved in this area for Iverson, they are not overlapping TIF districts. They are separate boundaries.
So does this go to a TIF board first?
So staff does the internal review on it, which that includes myself, Stephanie, Michelle, Joe, and Mark. Jenig is our city planner. So we do the internal review on it first. We work with the applicant or their attorney on making revisions to that project plan. Once it's hit a phase where it's sufficiently complete, that gets brought to the Planning Commission. And then once it goes to Planning Commission and they make their recommendations, then it comes to the City Council.
So there was no concerns from the TIF board?
You're talking the internal review team?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we provided a number of different comments to them.
Okay.
And they were able to address all of them. Actually, in this case, there weren't a whole lot. On past TIFs, we've given a lot more comments, but this one was pretty straightforward.
I do have a question for either Jason or Travis.
Sure.
I'm curious, is this contaminated soil that the dirt number is so high?
We got to put a retaining wall in. We got to recapture some of the ground that's there is not usable. It goes up against the railroad, so we'll have to put a retaining wall in, probably about 150 foot of it.
Okay.
Those are budgetary numbers. I don't think it's probably high enough.
And I know only what Stephanie certifies
Sure.
will be collected.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll have to, most of the ground is trees. If you drive over there on the back part of that ground, you can see where the line goes through the trees. Well, it's about a 10-foot drop off there.
Yep.
So we'll have to.
I'm really glad to see it being developed because I think it's a great location.
Sure.
And then there's one other question. Why is the plumbing number?
Because the sewer is 1,000 feet away. It's
Okay.
over there to the, down Austin Street. Keep going down, it's in that boulevard over there.
Okay.
That's a big problem. So it's north of Pizza Hut in that street.
Okay.
So we got to get it over there. And it's 26 foot deep.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
It's a very deep sewer.
think this is a great addition for Mitchell's with that all, to help them out more in the tax roll when it's done. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Shavers. Second by Mrs. Starks. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Action to approve Resolution R 2024-51, amending the 2024 compensation plan for the City of Mitchell.
Mayor and council, the resolution shown on the screen would amend the 2024 compensation plan to implement 2 changes from the appeals process when we implemented the study with our 3 unions and city employees. The first change would be the police officer positions are moving from a wage grade 16 to a wage grade 17. The second change is the detective positions are moving from a wage grade 17 to a wage grade 18. The total annual cost of that increase is $15,418, and that brings us up to more of a market comparison that we had with our other positions when we implemented the study. The increased costs will be covered by the unspent funds in the 2024 police departmental budget for health insurance and wages due to having vacancies in the department. We have one other change shown on the resolution, and that is we are going, instead of having 4 detective positions, we're going to change that so that it will be 3 detective positions. And in addition, we'd be creating a detective sergeant position. The detective sergeant would create a working supervisor role for detectives in the same way that police sergeants are working supervisors for police officers. The annual cost impact of that change is $7,549 and is also going to be covered by the unspent budget funds in 2024 police department budget. The position is going to be listed as an internal promotion only because we are not adding another position. We're just changing one of those detectives to a detective sergeant. We do believe that that will improve our chain of command within the police department. The detective sergeant, just like the police sergeants, will report directly to the lieutenant and the chief of police. All these changes have been discussed with the Teamsters Union as part of our ongoing labor management committee meetings, and I recommend approval of the resolution. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
I think this is great. It'll hopefully make us more competitive in a very tough market. And so with that, I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Goldhammer. Second by Mr. Barrington. Any further discussion?
I just happened to be in Stephanie's office, and it does sound like things have already.
Yeah, I won't speak specifically, but I'll say in the last 2 months, we have had a lot more applications. We've been using some online advertising, and since we've bumped up those wages, we did start listing that at the higher wage once we did the appeals, and we have had great quality applicants coming in for those positions. So I think we're really happy with the direction it's moving forward now.
How many officers are we down right now to be?
We have 5 vacancies, and I believe we have 4 offers out. Is that correct? 5 offers out
Okay.
now, even better.
Well, that's good. 5 vacancies is a lot in the police department.
3 of those are new positions. 2 are the ones
Yeah.
that council created this year. The other one is when we moved our animal control officer from an uncertified to a certified officer. So not only are we getting our positions filled, but we have 3 new people on the street too that are certified.
So anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? We have a motion in a second, right? Okay, I was just making sure. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Okay, first readings of ordinance Code 2024-06, method of electing officers for city council. I'll start with this. This is just to smooth out everything from the first meeting where we didn't know exactly what the procedure was, and we had to flip a coin, and we had to do some negotiating. So this is basically just to smooth all that out, so if that ever happens in the future, we can handle it quickly. Mr. Johnson, if you want to address this.
Yeah, so I probably won't walk you through the entire procedure here unless you want me to, but as the mayor said, I was asked to put this together based off of the election that we had following the last election. So really what this is meant to do is lay out some procedures for electing the officers. You first go through the nomination process. If you only get one nominee, that nominee gets the position. If you've got multiple nominees, you kind of stack the card until everybody's done nominating it. Once those are closed out, you move on to the next section where you start doing an election. If you've got multiple candidates at that point, the winner still needs to have 5 votes, which is, basically how we did things at the last meeting. So I used how we handled that last meeting as kind of a base for putting this together. I'm not saying that that's the way that it has to be done, but so we've got something to talk about here tonight. That's where I started. So you've got that election going on where you've got multiple candidates. I'll kind of just walk through a scenario where it's the most complicated, where you've got 3 candidates, you've got 1 that gets 4 and 2 that get 2 votes. So in that case, what you do is you've got a mechanism in here where you automatically remove one of the candidates that receives the fewest votes, and then you re-vote. Because in this case, you've got 2 that have the lowest number of votes. You have a coin flip to remove whichever one of those has the lowest amount of votes, and then you go back and you revote with the 2 remaining candidates at that point. Once you're down to those 2 candidates, if you still end up with a tie or one candidate does not receive 5 votes, then you move on and you have another coin flip to determine who gets it at that point. The last thing that this ordinance does would basically put these procedures in place for all the other boards and commissions that need to elect officers within the city, unless they have some other procedure that they have in place. One other thing that I did build in here is just in case these procedures aren't working, the board or the council always has the ability to go in and modify the rule for any given election at any time, so that if some weird scenario comes up that we didn't plan for, you can change the rules for that specific election, and then after that, it goes back to the default rules. So with that, I think we can open it up for any questions or discussion. Like I said, this doesn't have to be what we do, but it should cover just about any situation that we run into.
So just to summarize, if there's ever a tie, you guys can decide if we flip a coin or draw cards or pick straws or whatever. Justin has it set to flip a coin. I'm pretty sure most of us have coins in our pocket. If not, I still have the official coin from the first one framed in my office, and I can bring that out at any time. So this is just first reading, so we're just talking about this. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
If council wanted to suggest any amendments, we could do that tonight. We could do it at the second reading. Procedure-wise, if you're going to make changes, you might have to bring it back for another meeting the later on you do it.
This is just to solidify the procedure we did the first time.
Approval first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? What? All right, anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. First reading is done. All right, and motion to enter into executive session according to SDCL 1-25-23 legal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Motion carries. There will be no action afterwards.
Okay, go ahead.
We're adjourned.